Hey there, Timberwolves. I hope you are enjoying this asynchronous day. I'm sure you have a lot to do, like play in the snow or enjoy the cold weather or drinking hot cocoa. So just remember, today is an asynchronous day for all your classes. Make sure you're up on Canvas, checking it constantly, making sure you're doing your work. Because when we come back on Monday, that's the expectation, we're going to go ahead and hit the ground running. All right, let's go ahead and let's get started with today. If you can take a look, I am asking you to go ahead and look at this warm-up and think about it for a second. Going over Friday's lesson on limited government, as well as introducing ourselves to the 7 principles, understanding what they are. Just to give a quick refresher, those 7 principles are limited government, which is what you should have completed in your foldable in class, or if you are KVA, you should have filled it in on your slide. The second principle is separation of powers. The third, checks and balances. The fourth, federalism. Sixth, republicanism. 7, well, I guess 6, popular sovereignty, and then 7, individual rights. So let's go ahead and let's get into this. What is the purpose of these 7 principles that I just listed to the US and Texas constitutions? Remember, what is the purpose of them? What do they do? Well, take a second, think about it, and then I would like you to go on Canvas and answer this warm-up in the assignment that I have created for you. All right, so now that you have gone and done that, let's go ahead and let's take a look at what one of these things is. Limiting government. If you remember from yesterday's lesson, we're looking at the principle of limiting government means that the Constitution is meant to give power to the government only, what it can. So the Constitution limits the government power and basically tells the government what they can and can't do. So I want to show you a quick little video that's going to go ahead and elaborate on governments that are limited and then governments that are not. So let's take a moment and let's watch this.
The idea of having limited government is one of the basic principles under which the people of the United States are governed. A limited government possesses numerous built-in controls that restrict its use of power and stands in stark contrast to countries with authoritarian governments in which there are no real limits on the way that power is exercised. The framers of the U.S. Constitution carefully designed a government that was to be limited by the terms of the document itself. For example, the first 3 articles of the Constitution describe the structure of a national government consisting of 3 separate branches, the legislative, executive, and judicial, and detail the rules that limit how each of them will operate. These articles establish a comprehensive system of checks and balances intended to limit the powers of the branches in order to prevent any one of them from becoming dominant over any other. The Bill of Rights, the collective name for the first 10 amendments to the original Constitution, strongly supports the principle of limited government as well. In fact, the Bill of Rights was originally added to the Constitution to protect the rights of individual citizens and states from an overreach of power by the federal government. It sets distinct limits on how much the government is allowed to interact with its citizens, especially regarding their personal lives and matters of conscience and expression. The fundamental rights the Bill of Rights guarantees include such things as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the right to bear arms. Some of its amendments limit judicial and police power as well. Originally, the Bill of Rights was simply meant to limit potentially intrusive activities by the federal government. But after Congress ratified the 14th Amendment in 1868, the limitations were extended to include the activities of state and local governments too. Occasionally, in the name of national security, courts have seen fit to relax some of the limits on government power that are intended to protect individual privacy, and have allowed the personal communications of ordinary citizens to be spied upon by government agencies. Some people have responded to these intrusions with protests, demanding that their constitutionally guaranteed rights be defended and the normal limits on government interference be maintained, no matter what.
All right, y'all. Well, that is a really good understanding of government and how it works within countries that are democratic governments. Now, taking a look at other governments, like authoritative governments, looking at North Korea, as well as communist governments like China, those are going to be a little bit different. And the government's more involved in the people's lives, which means that they're not able to do specific things that we could here, such as being able to write specific things. And if they do write it, many people are usually arrested. So let's go ahead and let's just kind of move on, taking a look at the warm-up one more time. What is the purpose of the 7 principles of the U.S. and Texas Constitutions? Go ahead and fill that out in the assignment area that I have created for you for the warm-up. If you haven't done so, please do so now. I will now continue on to the next part of our lesson. So, separation of powers. In the video, we learned that separation of powers basically means one thing: to make sure that the branches of government are not together, that all the power is not in one branch. It is separated between 3 different branches. So let's go ahead and let's take a look. The definition states right here. Now, to remind you, what we're going to be doing is you should have your foldable with you, just like this. And inside here, you should be writing down the definition in your principles part right here. This is our principles, the separation of powers. Please go ahead and write that right here where it says separation of powers. In that part, just to kind of show you, you should write the definition. The government is divided into 3 branches, which each branch having its own job to do. Please write that in the definition part of separation of powers. Some examples are going to be the judicial branch. Remember, the judicial branch is going to be those judges where they judge the laws, they interpret the laws. The legislative branch, like I like to say, L for laws, power to create laws. The executive branch, power to enforce the laws. Just remember, each one has its own particular action, and each one has specific parties that work with it to be able to make sure that these branches are able to complete their jobs, as well as making sure that they don't get too much power. So again, you have your judicial, legislative, and executive. Each one is able to interact with one another, as well as each one is going to stop the other one from gaining too much power. So let's go ahead and let's see our next information, looking at the legislative branch. Now we should be on the back of our paper right here within the chart. That's where we're going to be right now, taking a look at our chart. We will be filling out the information for the legislative branch right here. Let me actually stop my share for 1 second so you can see it bigger. So we're going to be working on the back part. We're going to be talking about the separation of powers, and we're going to be filling it out for the federal, which would be the government, and the state of Texas. I will go ahead and stop the share as I go through and show you what you need to write. Well, let's go ahead and let's go back to that share really quick. So the legislative branch, remember, legislative, L for laws. Let's go ahead and let's move on. This is the legislative building. We are now going to be right here looking at the American flag. The American flag means we are going to be taking information on our federal side, because the federal government of America, this is where we take our first notes. Okay, let's go ahead and let's go back. So this is the Capitol building. This is what we see. We have House of Representatives, the Rotunda, and the Senate. So the legislative branch is made up of two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. That makes up the Congress. So the Congress is a bicameral Congress, which means it's made up of two branches. So inside your notes, what you should do is in the federal level, you should be writing down the legislative is bicameral. And understand that it is split up between two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and that makes up the Congress. So let's go ahead and let's dig a little deeper. Their responsibilities. Please write that in the responsibility side. The responsibility side of this is going to be to make the nation's laws. That's their job, to make the nation's laws. Now remember, the nation is going to be the United States. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at the next one. Who are the members? Well, these members are going to be the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate is going to be made up of 100 members, 2 members per state. That means we have how many states? If you said 50, you're right. 50 times 2 is 100. So the Senate leader is going to be the Vice President. The House of Representatives is based off of population in particular states. So there are 435 members based on states' populations. For example, Texas has a pretty high population, so they're going to have higher representatives. Whereas you go to an area such as Rhode Island has a smaller population, so they're not going to have as many representatives. And if you don't know where Rhode Island is, it's in New England, right next to Connecticut and below Massachusetts. So let's go ahead and let's read into this a little bit further. So inside your federal, what I would like you to do is to write, remembering it's a bicameral system. So let me go ahead and stop my share and show you what you should be writing. Okay. Turn this down for you to see. Okay, so what you are basically writing is going to be, it's a bicameral system, okay, and it's made up of 2 houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay, the Senate has 100 members. And the House of Representatives has 435 members. Okay, this is 2 per state, and this is based on population. So that is what you're writing right here, just to make sure you understand what we're doing. The responsibility is going to be, as I said before, to make the nation's laws. Let's go ahead and let's go back. So, moving on from here, Texas also has a legislative branch, which is going to be very similar. So when we look at the legislative branch for Texas, we have members. The members of the legislative branch inside of Texas are going to be 31 members. The 31 members are the state's leaders in the lieutenant government of Texas. And then Texas House of Representatives is the House. The House has 150 members. The responsibilities for Texas are going to be pass bills and state funding. So that's what we're looking for. So what I would like to do is use a different color for my state. I'm choosing blue, and their responsibility is to pass bills. And then state funding. That is the legislative's job. Now, again, what you're going to understand is this is set up pretty simply. For Texas, we have members. We have Texas Senate and the Texas House of Representatives, which is also a bicameral system. And it is set up with Texas Senate and our House of Representatives. Okay, and the House of Representatives is 150 members, and our Texas Senate is 31 members. All right, so this is where we are right now. So let me just go ahead and show you what I have so far for my notes so you can go ahead and take a look and see what yours should look like. Let me put this down, turn it around, and it should look something like this. Okay, so you have your bicameral system. Okay, just making sure it gets a little bit closer. There we go, that should be a little bit better. Okay, so you have your bicameral system, okay, and you have the Texas Senate with 31 members. And then you have the Texas House of Representatives with 150 members. And their job is to pass bills and to work on state funding. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get back to the rest of our notes. Okay, so now we move on to our executive branch. Remember, we're going to be right below it. So the executive branch inside the federal part, again, I'm using my black pen for my federal, is the White House. That's where the president lives. So the executive branch responsibility is to execute or carry out the nation's laws. Take a moment to write it. Okay, that's their job. So who are we in there? The members are going to be the president, the vice president, and the president's cabinet. Example, the Secretary of State. So, for example, the executive branch is going to be our president and his cabinet, vice president, and the presidential cabinet. All right, so basically what happens is the president is able to go ahead and appoint people of his cabinet to help him execute the laws inside of the nation. So let's go ahead and let's take a look. Over here, we see the president is the leader of the executive branch. He has all these people beneath him to help him be a good leader, such as the vice president, secretary of labor. Labor means jobs. Secretary of state. Secretary of Health and Humane Services, Secretary of Treasury, and moving on, so on and so forth. So these are the different emblems that represent each particular part, especially the most important one that I think of is the Secretary of Education. Okay, that is at least very important to me because I'm a teacher and I need guidance to be able to go ahead and teach you all. Let's go ahead and let's move on. So the executive branch in Texas, now I'm using a blue pen, but you can choose any other one. So the executive branch inside of Texas, now we're on the state side, is going to be the governor. His responsibility is to oversee the states and agencies. Okay, so you're going to be putting down the Texas governor. Do you know who our Texas governor is? That's right, it's Abbott. Okay, so for example, he is able to go ahead and work with the people, such as the Attorney General, the school board, the Railroad Commission, the Agriculture Commission, and so on and so forth. So what you're going to say is the Texas governor, and his job again is to oversee state agencies. Texas governor, and some people that you're going to be putting in here is the Attorney General. Okay, and you have the school board, which is the TEA, and such as Railroad Commission, and so on and so forth. Okay, and I'm just going to show you what I have in mind to see if it's comparable to what you have. So let's go ahead, let's take a look, and this is what I have for my executive branch. So again, I have the Texas governor. Just do that for you. I have the Texas governor, and I have the Attorney General beneath him, the school board, the railroad. Now, no one is more above another in these branches or these particular agencies. It's just that each one has a particular job, and the Texas governor is there, again, to oversee the state's agencies. Just like the president is able to go ahead and oversee his particular areas, specifically inside of his cabinet to carry out the nation's laws. So again, the executive branch is very important. Those are our leaders. Let's go ahead and let's go back to our lesson and finish up with our judicial branch, and that is where we will end it. Okay, going back over here, let's take a look at our judicial branch. So just kind of moving on with the executive branch inside of Texas, you have the governors, and so on and so forth, employees, benefits, health and human services, public land and safety. These are just kind of areas that the governor will go ahead and oversee. All right, let's go ahead and let's look at the judicial branch. Again, judging the laws. They are there to interpret those laws. So inside of the federal area, the responsibilities of the judicial branch is going to be to interpret the nation's laws. So please write that down in the responsibilities. Okay, and basically what we're looking, this is the Supreme Court. This is the highest court inside of our nation. Okay, so what we're seeing here is the Supreme Court of the United States and all lower federal courts. Okay, there are 9 justices of the Supreme Court, and they serve for life. They are appointed and approved by the legislative branch. They are appointed by the executive branch and then approved by the legislative branch. So basically what you're going to be putting here is you're going to be putting the Supreme Court of the United States is going to be our judicial branch. So please write down Supreme Court. Okay, of the U.S. Now we're going to be looking at, and again, they take all over the lower federal courts as well. Okay, and when we take a look at that, it's important to know that there are 9 chief justices. And they serve for life. Right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at Texas and how their judicial branch works. So the judicial branch in Texas, taking a look over here, this is the Texas flag. The responsibilities are basically going to be to handle civil cases and oversee lower courts. So here's my blue pen. I'm going to go ahead and write down my information, and that's going to be handle civil cases. Okay, and oversee lower courts. Okay, And again, the members are going to be the Texas Supreme Court and their 9 justices. So for the state, we have the Texas Supreme Court. Okay, and they have 9 chief justices. All right. So now that you have that down, let me show you what I have in mind, and let's see if it matches yours. I'm going to stop my share, okay, and you can take a look at mine. As you can tell, I have right here in the Supreme Court, I have the Supreme Court and the lower federal courts, 9 justices who serve for life. Okay, and then looking over here, on our Texas Supreme Court is our judicial branch, and there are 9 justices here. Okay, I am sorry I did not use my blue pen. Forgive me. Let's go back up and let's come right here back to our share, and I will finish up with our lesson. Okay, so right here we have the 3 branches of government, and this is kind of what we have looked at. So our 3 branches of government are our legislative branch, the laws, our judicial branch that judges or interprets the laws, and our executive branch, which is there to go ahead and enforce those laws for our nation, depending on where we are. So what I would like you to do is I'm going to assign you right here a brain pop video, and I would like you to go ahead and take that quiz. I really hope that you had an opportunity to go ahead and learn a few things about the 3 branches of government. And I'm also going to be adding another video for you to watch, for you to take a quiz that I am going to use as extra credit. It is not required for you to watch, but it is going to be there for you to get an opportunity to learn about these 3 branches in a more detailed manner. Well, Timberwolves, I hope everything is well, and I will see you Wednesday, hopefully. Fingers crossed. All right, guys, enjoy the snow. Bye.